Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 6:07. Thanks so much for letting us into your morning routine. Proud to be here. We got a lot to cover. At 6:35, Cal Thomas will be our guest. 7:35, Ed Martin, former U.S. Attorney of the District. 8:35, Congressman Jim Jordan. Larry with Julie Gunlock. Good morning.
Good morning.
Here's the Washington Post for you. Editorial board fresh off the presses yesterday afternoon. Here it is. Ready? Headline: If Biden was too frail for his job, voters should have been informed. Transparency is essential for democratic processes to operate as intended. Didn't the Washington Post, create a whole division of investigative reporters to get to the bottom of the fake, phony Russian collusion hoax when Trump was president?
Yeah, I think they actually had a huge team investigating a Supreme Court justice's wife for the way she hung a flag, Larry.
Yes, and an argument she had with a neighbor. Yeah.
Right, and another Supreme Court justice for whose friend he vacationed with. I think there was a whole team assigned to that as well. Yeah.
In fact, isn't their motto, democracy dies in darkness?
I've heard that, yeah.
Which I believe implies to the reader, or at least I inferred it as a reader, that they were the ones to shine a light in the darkness. That without them speaking truth to power and not
Dark
taking,
ages.
And then I do love the Alex Thompson, Jake Tapper book tour here that really hit robustly yesterday, since it was publishing day yesterday, but release day. That Alex Thompson keeps saying in the middle of these interviews, he's the White House correspondent who won a freaking award.
Yeah.
As Megyn Kelly puts it, it was like winning an award for being the skinniest person at a fat farm. It's like, I'm sorry, you didn't have much competition, dude.
Yeah,
but
congratulations
he constantly
on failing.
says he's doing these interviews, and he constantly stops himself in the middle of hammering the Biden administration, and he says, of course, all White Houses lie. All White Houses lie.
Yes.
So, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Hey, that's the entire Jake Tapper, Alex Thompson book tour here is they lied to us. The White House lied for years. The campaign lied. They said he was fine.
We're victims, too.
And what are we going to do? I mean, they told us he was fine, so what are we supposed to do?
Yeah.
Obviously, as if they just benignly regurgitated what the White House told them. But of course, that's not at all what they did. And again,
with the Trump administration, these journalists like Tapper, like this Alex guy, the default is they're lying. Everything Trump says is they are lying.
Of course.
And then they start from there.
Says, what's the thing? We should go back and look at every single chyron or every single monologue Jake Tapper has told in the last 10 years when he says, President Trump today said, without evidence. Okay, so every time the White House said that Joe Biden is cognitively great and he's wonderful, they said it without evidence.
Right.
And yet it was a different standard, it appears.
Yeah, and again, the jumping off place for Tapper with any Republican. And again, this is not just any Republican. I came to Washington during the Bush years. Bush was a liar. Bush was a liar.
Right.
Every Republican lies.
That's right. The Washington Post continues to say, listen to this. This is rich. Biden is owed respect for his decades of public service. Why? They said without evidence. They said without evidence. Where's the evidence that he is owed respect?
Well, also,
what has he done in his lamentable career that deserves respect? But then they say, but the office he held must be respected too. And this is why, despite his latest malady, the public conversation must continue about this. Yeah. So the whole thing about his cancer actually doesn't diffuse this conversation as I think they believed it would. It actually amplifies it and is basically exhibit A of the problem, because we think they lied about that as well. But number two, Jake Tapper now going on this mea culpa tour as he did with Megyn Kelly yesterday, a riotous episode of the Megyn Kelly Show, which I commend to you. Probably one of the most important podcasts out there. We joke about podcasts, but this is a great one and an important one. Mostly because Megyn Kelly got chewed up and spit out by the mainstream legacy media, and she didn't take her settlement from NBC and go skulk away and enjoy life on a Caribbean island. She said, "Oh, screw all you people! I'm
Which, by the way, we both would have."
It's 100% would have. Give me my $30 million buyout, Cumulus. I'll be. You'll never hear from me again. But Megyn plugs a microphone into her laptop, turns on a camera, and now she's getting more downloads than the networks get on YouTube.
Right.
And now, so Jake Tapper is like, oh, I have such great humility. He's been so coached. He's been so rehearsed. I have great humility over my coverage. What does that even mean, you have humility? You were wrong. You were wrong, and even worse, you attacked anyone. You didn't conduct your television show, Jake Tapper, like your job was to inform your viewers. And when you conducted an interview like the one you did with Laura Trump, you didn't ask her questions and allow her to speak. You debated with her, and you tried to defeat her in the debate. That's not your job, but you decided it was your job. And the debate was over Joe Biden's health, and you got it wrong. Because you wanted to get it wrong.
And this is why, and we have long said this, the mainstream, the corporate press is nothing but an adjunct of the Democrat Party. They are literally the PR department.
And Jake Tapper's the worst of the worst.
Absolutely.
So his fake humility tour here is actually having an opposite effect. I got to tell you, every single interview he does, I think he loses more and more credibility. The last audience he had were Trump haters, and now they're mad at him for telling the truth. Who's going to watch his show? And meanwhile, he's throwing the rest of the journalists under the bus. What he's willing to go through to debase himself and humiliate himself to sell books, I hope it's worth it. Because I don't know where his career ends up on the other side of this. Let's go to Megyn Kelly, because I went to sleep listening to this last night. I listened to it on the drive home. I listened to it in bed as I fell asleep. So it's like in my DNA.
Yeah.
Cut 10. Let's go.
I did ask Joe Biden to be transparent about his health records in an interview in 2020. I did ask him about the fact that voters
but then he wasn't.
Thought that he was not transparent at all. No.
He promised you that he would be transparent about his health records, and then he wasn't. And when you sat with him again,
at all.
including 1 month after the Jackie Walorski thing, you didn't ask him about it. You didn't follow up on the fact that he was falling up the stairs, that he was losing his train of thought regularly, that he was slurring, that he was incomprehensible, that he was getting lost on the White House lawn. You sat right across from him and you asked none of that, notwithstanding the fact that he had promised you he would be fully transparent about his health issues.
That's true, but I did ask him about his age and the fact that the American people had concluded that even though he said whenever anybody brought up the subject of his age, watch me. And I said, yes, they're watching you and they are concerned that you were too old for this job.
But you know as well as I do that there's a way of, you can say, hey, there's this poll on your age, or you could say, you just forgot that Jackie Walorski was dead. You asked where she was moments after watching a videotape tribute to her. You lowered the flags at the White House after she died. This happened 13 days before you sat with him. There is a way of pressing a man like that on the actual infirmities to bring it home to him and to the audience, and you didn't do it.
Yeah, good for Megyn. There's more. I want you to hear it. But this whole, his excuse, well, I did ask him about his age. We've been saying this from the beginning, that is a camouflage. It's a dodge. It's a cloaking device. Because it has nothing to do with his age. We have constantly said, we know people who are older than Joe Biden, who are more coherent and don't show the symptoms. This is not about his age. So when Jake Tapper says, well, hey, I asked him about his age, that's a deliberate dodge to try to get away with this, like it was some get out of jail free card.
Yeah, really quickly. Larry has said, I really recommend you listen to this. Don't just listen. If you can, watch it, because Jake Tapper's discomfort, the look on his face. I mean, honestly, Larry, he looks pale. He looks sick to his stomach. I mean, if you were to describe the flu, this would be Jake Tapper's face right now. So I do think it's important to watch it if you can. It's amazing.
Yeah,
and I know
it
we
really
have more.
is. And again, I'm sure it sold a lot of books. Megyn Kelly, hundreds of thousands of views within an hour of this thing dropping. You're selling your books, Jake, but
buy Larry's book instead.
Well, I'll tell you, actually, he's helping my book sales right now. I'll tell you about that in a minute, and more from the Megyn Kelly interview.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
All right, let's get right to it. There's more here, and I want you to hear as much as we can. Cut 11 again. Megyn Kelly with Jake Tapper.
Over here in my ecosphere, We were covering all of these. It wasn't just falling down. It was getting lost. It was some of the stuff you report in your book, we knew and we were reporting on, like the multi-jump cuts in the videos of him, where it was obvious he couldn't get through a 1-minute take. It was clear to us that he was using teleprompter, and there was some reporting on that at the time, all of which the White House was denying. Now, the current White House, I have some connections. With the Joe Biden White House, I had none. But you did. There was an attempted cover-up. It could only ever work if you allowed it, if the press allowed it. Some of us tried not to, and some of us were complicit.
The Biden White House did not like me. Okay, I do not have great connections with the Biden White House.
Well, clearly you have a lot of sources. You say you talked to over 200 sources for this book. So you have some election, you could have called and worked.
No, that's the point, is that they were not being honest. That's
well,
the
how
point.
Did the Wall Street Journal get it in June of 2024? And Jake Tapper and CNN couldn't find sources for this story then before he dropped out?
Annie Linsky and Siobhan Hughes did an amazing job in their reporting. And they should be heralded, and I heralded them. I had them on my show right after the debate to talk about their great reporting. But Annie Linsky,
the debate. But you did not put them on when they published that story, which was before the debate.
Correct. I don't know what the booking situation was, but it wasn't because I didn't want them. I'm sure I said that day, let's book. I'm sure I said that day, let's book that. Did they? Yeah,
you put on a Democrat, and you allowed the Democrat to rip on the report as a Rupert Murdoch sponsored hit piece.
No.
It's just
Megyn.
Well, that's
Megyn,
what happened.
If we're going to do this, let's just stick to the facts here, okay? When there is a damaging report,
that's what I've been doing all along.
I'm talking about what you just said.
Didn't miss the biggest story of the century when it comes to presidential politics, and one of us did.
I loved that. She was not having. Hey, let's just stick to the facts. Hey, one of us here did stick to the facts, pal.
You know, yeah, and I also watched some other interviews with Jake Tapper and Alex yesterday, one with Katie Couric. And you can just tell, like, let's softball these questions. Let's let, Tapper say whatever he wants. I mean, Katie Couric, my God, of course. They're all in the same club. This was so satisfying.
Let's get a little bit more. Cut 12 here. I'll run this as long as I can, but watch for me. We might have to cut it. Go.
But, Jake, the criticism has been that you're complaining about a cover-up about Joe Biden's mental acuity that failed, that right-wing pundits saw, the right wing in general saw, that independent media saw and reported on, and that was no mystery even to left-wing and so-called mainstream reporters who were not fooled but chose willful blindness instead of honest reporting, and that you were part of it. How do you respond?
It's a tough and fair question. I would say that Alex and I, after Election Day, interviewed more than 200 people, 200 mostly Democratic insiders, and almost all of these interviews were after the election. And they justified to themselves what they had done in terms of misrepresenting how the president was, not just to me and Alex and other reporters, but also just to each other and to the world and to Democrats and to the cabinet, et cetera, by saying that there was this existential threat of Donald Trump and only Joe Biden could beat Donald Trump, and that justified everything in their minds. After that existential threat was over, because the election was over and Donald Trump won, we found, Alex and myself, remarkably willing to talk to us either off the record or on background, or in some cases on the record, about what they saw. One of the things that emerged was that there were two Bidens. One was the fine Biden, serviceable, adequate, and the other one was a non-functioning Biden, and that's the one we saw.
It's funny. That was going to be their campaign slogan for re-election. Half of the time, he's serviceable and adequate.
Right.
Vote for us. And again, eventually he comes around because he kept saying, "Oh, we got it wrong. We missed it. We got all these." And finally, Megyn Kelly gets him to say, "And conservative media got it right.
Yeah,
they got it right. They were right. We were wrong." But here's the point: there shouldn't be a conservative media in liberal media. There shouldn't be a conservative media in legacy media. We should all be doing the same thing, which is just you can have your opinion, Jake, but you can't have your own version of the facts. And we all saw the facts. We all knew it. It's 6:23.
Coming up, It's Cal time. We've got a lot to talk about. The big, beautiful bill, the cover-up of Biden. Keep it here. It's 6:30.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 6:36. Thanks for tuning in here on Wednesday. That means Cal Thomas is up. Also at 7:35, we'll talk to Ed Martin, former U.S. Attorney for the district, about his new gig with the Justice Department. And at 8:35, Representative Jim Jordan, chair of the Judiciary Committee. With Ed Martin, of course, we'll ask him, part of his job at the DOJ now is to look into pardons. We'll ask him specifically about Joe Biden's pardon in light of confirmation of many. Everyone's saying, oh, these revelations about Joe Biden, none of those are revelations. These are confirmations of what we've been discussing and observing and analyzing for, well, quite some time. It's Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
Here's Cal Thomas. He, of course, is syndicated columnist. And I've had a peek at tomorrow's column, Cal. And, I've been not joking, I've been observing that this is such a huge scandal the more we're learning. And I think it's the tip of the iceberg. That's how these things happen. It's the crime and then the cover up with regard to Joe Biden and his lack of ability to hold the office. And I say that it makes Watergate look like a walk in the park. And you kind of get into that a bit in your column tomorrow.
Yeah, I think what we need is the equivalent of Woodward and Bernstein in the Watergate era. I mean, they underplay this. It's no big deal. Let's move on. That's the past. We can't change the past. We can only change the future. And you got people on television now and cable news, the Democrats who are making this case, and it's just ridiculous. If it was a Republican case, it would be screaming headlines. There would be calls for arrests and impeachment and everything else. It's so hypocritical.
It is so hypocritical, Cal. And the interesting thing is they announced this cancer diagnosis, and I feel like it was almost they wanted to use it as the new stutter, like leave him alone. This is his new thing to endure. But it fell flat because that cancer diagnosis, it's clear that kind of, and most doctors are going, except one on CBS who sort of made it up as she went along. But most doctors agree that this is a cancer that would have been detected long ago, not something that just suddenly is revealed.
Well, the president's doctor, Kevin O'Connor, to paraphrase Desi Arnaz, has a lot of explaining to do. I mean, this is the guy who he said Biden was fit for another 4 years. Now, that is obviously untrue. You do not have to be a medical doctor any more than you have to be a member of the NTSB who sees a plane crash and says, hey, that's a plane crash. You don't have to be an expert in plane crashes to point out the obvious. And Biden was a plane crash. I mean, I have an annual physical. They always look at the PSA numbers. Mine are within the the boundaries and all of that. So you're not going to tell me that he didn't have those numbers available.
Right.
There's a lot of cover-up going on here, and I'm glad that James Comey of the House Oversight Committee has announced he's going to have hearings. All of these people, from the doctor to Jill Biden, even to some of these people like Jake Tapper, ought to be brought before the committee, put under oath, and forced to tell the truth. And if they don't, suffer the penalties of perjury.
James Comer, by the way. Comey is taking walks on the beach, Cal, as you know.
I thought I said Comer. I'm sorry.
That's a whole other story.
I was practicing my childhood non-stuttering seashell. I can't even say it now. She sells seashells down by the seashore. Yeah. I want to know where this beach is. This is the most political beach I've ever heard of in my life. Where is this beach?
Isn't it amazing to think this guy was the FBI director with this kind of behavior? He's right. He's just selling a book, Cal. Leave him alone. Listen, Republicans are in the House. They did an overnight session in the Rules Committee. You've seen these things, these all-night sessions, trying to drag people across the finish line, get the reconciliation bill passed. It's really a tax cut bill. I don't know why the Republicans aren't branding it that way. It's a huge tax cut bill. Well, do you think they're going to make it?
I don't know, Larry. You got 4 congressmen who are holding out for more cuts, and this bill is so far 1,600 pages. And whenever you have a bill that long, you know there's got a lot of stuff in there that is obscure that they're not talking about. Okay, permanent tax cuts, that's fine. No tax on tips, that's fine. I guess they've got no tax on Social Security in there. But what else have they got in there? They got a lot of more spending in there. You had Kristi Noem, the Homeland Security Secretary, yesterday testifying about how much it's going to cost to finish the southern border wall. Well, she was challenged on that, and most of these initial figures are well under what the cost is. President Trump wants to build a Golden Dome. He said that's going to cost $500 billion. Well, it's probably going to cost 4 or 5 times that, even if it works. And as you know, things wear out. Things get conquered by new technology. There's just a lot of spending going on that, I thought we were going to cut. Now, the president says trillions are coming in from the Middle East and all these other promises that were made. Well, maybe they are. But, in Washington, when money comes in, it goes out as fast as it goes in. And I've never seen too many members of Congress who actually follow through on their promises to cut spending.
Well, and there's a new poll out that shows, Cal, that of all of the issues that Congress is discussing and facing, the debt and the deficit really doesn't register with voters.
Well, it's too bad because it should. And this is part of the problem, Larry and Julie. People feel entitled to things. And as long as I'm getting mine, I don't care. And that's too bad. We need to think about what promotes the general welfare and look to the future. Democrats used to talk about this. We can't pass along the debt to our children and grandchildren. We have an obligation. I've heard all this stuff for years. It's all baloney.
Right. Kicking it
Cal
down.
Thomas.
Thank you, sir. Down the road.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
All right. It's 6:43.
Mark Levin, weekdays 6 till 9 on 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
It's 6:48 now as we plow through this very busy Wednesday morning. President Trump yesterday, a surprise announcement that was not part of the president's daily schedule. I think they added this around 9:30, I want to say, which is very rare. Usually, the president has a daily schedule, and then they try to adhere to it because he's a busy guy, and there's a lot of logistics involved, even moving him around the White House complex and the executive office building and anything else that he's doing. But in this case, they threw together a hastily called press briefing along with Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. There was a lot of speculation what it was about. Turns out President Trump wanted to announce what he's calling the Golden Dome. Listen.
I am pleased to announce that we have officially selected an architecture for this state-of-the-art system that will deploy next-generation technologies across the land, sea, and space, including space-based sensors and interceptors. And Canada has called us, and they want to be a part of it. So we'll be talking to them. They want to have protection also. No. So, as usual, we help Canada do the best we can. This design for the Golden Dome will integrate with our existing defense capabilities and should be fully operational before the end of my term. So we'll have it done in about 3 years.
Obviously, it evokes the Iron Dome that Israel has deployed. And I've been mentioning this ever since we've seen the Iron Dome in action over the course of the last 10 years, intercepting rockets, from their peace-loving neighbors, the Palestinians and the Lebanese and the other people who want to annihilate them from the map. The Iron Dome has saved Israel. And I pointed out that Ronald Reagan was mocked for the SDI strategy, the Strategic Defense Initiative, Star Wars, and they said it was stupid and it was fantasy and it was science fiction. No, that exact technology utilized for the Iron Dome came from the SDI, the Strategic Defense Initiative that Ronald Reagan envisioned. And Trump yesterday gave Reagan a hat tip.
Yeah, once fully constructed, the Golden Dome will be capable of intercepting missiles even if they are launched from other sides of the world and even if they are launched from space. And we will have the best system ever built. As you know, we helped Israel with theirs, and it was very successful, and now we have technology that's even far advanced from that, but including hypersonic missiles, ballistic missiles, and advanced cruise missiles. All of them will be knocked out of the air. We will truly be completing the job that President Reagan started 40 years ago, forever ending the missile threat to the American homeland, and the success rate is very close to 100%, which is incredible when you think of.
All right. right, that's huge. And sadly, we're out of time, so we'll talk about this a little bit further as the day goes on, and also probably for the rest of the week, because this is going to get a lot of attention. Coming up, Secretary of State Marco Rubio yesterday manhandled Senator Chris Van Hollen.